I'm not letting shame hold me down. I am not going to be the person who just tries to appear that I'm unfazed. I'm going to be open with you and say, you know what, I'm not my best self right now, and I need to take a break. Hello, lovers and learners. My name is Beverley Andre, and I am a couples therapist. And today I am joined by Nikquan Lewis. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor, and a certified sex therapist. And she's joining me today on my channel because we're going to talk about how shame impacts intimate connections and what to do about it. So I'm so thankful to have you here, Nikquan, and to everyone else who's watching. Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here with us. So just really quickly, I really want you to tell just a little bit more about the work that you do and how did you get into this field?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me so much. Hey, y'all. So, a little bit more about me. It's funny the language that you use, right? We're talking about intimate connections here, which is so important, not talked about enough. I am the owner of Intimate Connections PLLC. It's the name of my private
Not
practice.
owner,
Owner, okay, with the kids and everything.
founder.
Founder. So I service all of Texas. I'm 100% virtual, and also do relationship coaching that is globally. And so I am an author, the author of When Trauma is Your Author, the price your relationships pay, and how to reclaim your story, which is all about how trauma and shame is maybe writing your story in ways that you don't know, and it colors how you love, live, and lead, parent, all the things. And it's also the blueprint to how to take the pen back, which is something that I wish was around when I was coming up and getting into relationships. And so I also am a major contributor to major platforms like Essence, Cosmo, Glamour, and more. I am a recent TEDx speaker with a talk called Pleasure Ain't the Problem, Shame Is. So, shame is something I know quite a bit about from my own lived experience as a teen mom, which led me to this journey to, a licensed therapist who helps primarily Black women and couples to improve intimacy with themselves first and then others, which requires we do that deep dive on the impact of shame and trauma.
I'm just sitting here because I'm just like, yes, give the receipts. You're such an amazing person at what you do. I was there in the audience, y'all, at her TED Talk. And when I say she killed it, she killed it. It was so good. And I really hope that by the time this gets posted, that the TED Talk video, I don't know if it's up yet, but I'll definitely link it when it does become available because you guys need to be able to watch this. And that's one of the main things, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because we both work with couples, and more often than not, shame is at the root of a lot of what these couples are dealing with. A lot of their experiences are filtered through the lens of shame, which impacts their ability to be vulnerable and open with each other. And so I want you to talk a little bit more about how does shame show up in the work that you do with couples.
Absolutely. So, one, it's important to know that when I advocate for all of us to live a pleasure filled life, and I talked about that in the TED Talk. In order to do so, you have to understand your relationship with shame. A lot of times it's generational. These are learned lessons. We're talking about generational dysfunction and patterns passed down. So if I hear messaging around, let's start with us as women, around my body, around sexuality, around what I'm supposed to do or not supposed to do as a partner, all of those things color how I show up. Same thing for, men or whoever else. And so if I'm hearing all of these messaging, not to mention the media, right? We learn so much from all of these different influences. And then that colors my ability to connect with my own body. If I can't connect with my own body, connecting with a partner becomes challenging or performative, right? I might be able to do the thing, we can have sex, but that doesn't mean that I'm enjoying it. I'm experiencing pleasure. I may be doing it because it's something I think I need to do to please someone. So in the couples that I work with, we do so much deep diving work on what is your relationship with sex? How does shame impact that? So as a narrative therapist, My foundation is in postmodern therapy. So my primary theories are narrative therapy, solution focus, and collaborative language systems. So that helps us to externalize. So with the couples that I work with, we externalize, which means to separate shame from them, right? Because if they're the problem, if they are the reason their sex life isn't where they want it to be, if they themselves are the reason that they are disconnected and communicating real ghetto, then what do you do with them, right? If they're the problem, so we separate that. What is ineffective? How has ineffective communication impacted this disconnection between you two? How is shame impacting your ability to be vulnerable and trust one another and feel safe in your bodies and together? So shame is definitely one of the primary reasons that people come to me. They don't know that though, right? They're coming because
Communication
they,
problem.
right. He's the problem, she's the problem, they're the problem. We're not connecting, we're not communicating, we're not
Mhm.
having the sex life we want.
Right. And I think it's really powerful that you mention just the externalizing aspect of narrative therapy, because what it does is, like you said, it transitions the person from looking at each other as you're the problem versus let's see how this issue is impacting our relationship. And we can't look at the issue neutrally in a way if we're locating it within each other versus like we're externalizing, we're looking at its function, how it's impacting you, how is it impacting me, and then when we focus on that process, it allows us as two people to further connect against whatever the issue is. And I think that's because I'm a fellow narrative therapist as well, and I think that's one of the breakthroughs that a lot of people start off initially experiencing, because it's like, oh, we're not focusing on the person, we're focusing on the process and how it's impacting us.
Absolutely. One of the things I tell every couple I work with is to adopt the viewpoint it is us against the problem,
Yeah.
right? Because if it's me against you, you going to lose. If
Every
it's you
time.
against me, you going to
Or
lose.
it's a stalemate, right? Because think about how often couples are like, we've been having the same issue over and over and over again with no resolve. We haven't been able to figure out a solution. It's because they're so fixated in their positions, in them believing that this is the right way to go about something. And if you would only fix yourself, then this would, resolve itself. Like, if I'm right, that means you're automatically wrong.
Yes. And
Yeah.
if one person wins the argument, the marriage loses or the
The marriage
relationship.
loses. Oh, if one person wins, the marriage loses.
Yeah.
Can you say
Because
more
again,
about that?
absolutely. That's another thing I tell them. In connection with this us against the problem. If we are arguing, we're not just disagreeing. It's okay. Everyone is gonna have conflict. Let's be clear. Conflict is not the problem. How we engage in conflict is what gets us into trouble. Right?
Right,
Because some person is trying to win an argument. But if you win, your relationship loses. Because imagine how that leaves your partner feeling
right,
defeated, disappointed, hurt, maybe shameful,
right.
right? Blamed, and there's no resolution in that. So I tell all of my couples, get away from trying to win, and again, it's us against the problem. The problem, miscommunication is the problem. Shame is the problem. Lack of intimacy is the problem. And
Right.
they're always focusing on the details. We know that as couples therapists, people get lost in the details, but it's the underlying issues that they're not addressing.
Yeah. Talking about the details gets them to the point where they're just doubling down on their positions and they're trying to use facts as opposed to, well, let's think about how you feel about the way in which you guys were trying to talk to each other. And even with that, I'm just thinking about like how that impacts like your body, like during conflict. Because conflict, all that is an avenue for greater intimacy. But if you don't see it as such, I'm thinking about how people's bodies are typically reacting during conflict, and then how people can experience shame physically and within their thoughts. So, I mean, because you're the expert today in our conversation, I want you to talk about just how people typically do experience shame in their body, in their thoughts, and how that manifests into creating bigger issues in their relationship.
Thoughts and feelings fuel behavior. And so If I feel shame in my body, if it's sexually, then maybe I'm more reserved when I'm around. Maybe I'm more reserved, period, right? I can't look at myself in the mirror. I struggle with that. Or if I'm with a partner, I'm more reserved with my partner. I'm not allowing myself or giving myself permission to lean into pleasure. If I feel shame in conflict, maybe I'm shutting down. Maybe I'm not open to the possibility of resolution. Or on the flip side, maybe I'm just giving in to avoid feeling more of this. So I'm abandoning myself, right? Or abandoning what's best, not what's right, but what's best. And so shame is absolute. It's a feeling, it's a pattern, it's a thought. It can literally live within you if you don't know what to look for.
Mhm. Shame is something that can grow and it can evolve in different facets of people's life. I thought about what you just said about how like sometimes it can be avoidant behavior or abandoning of self. And anytime someone like avoids or they abandon themselves, there's like a buffer that's placed between them and the experience or the feeling. I would imagine it would make it even more difficult to talk about shame when you have these responses to it. Like you feel that avoidant behavior wants to come up when you feel shame. Like why do you feel like it makes shame so hard to talk about?
Because who wants to feel bad or hurt or sad or that they've done something wrong? Right? Nobody wants to feel that. And so people will avoid the feeling. And they will shut down to avoid continuing to talk about that and continuing the feeling. And so it becomes such a barrier because now we're getting lost in the context and the details and we're not able to address the underlying issue because this doesn't feel good, right? The body and the brain will do what it needs to do to avoid feeling certain things. It is the deep work that has to be done in order to recognize this is a feeling, this is not fact, right? Feelings and thoughts are valid, but they're not facts. And so being able to sit with that discomfort, regulate your emotions. So this is why I tell people when you're dealing with emotions, you want to identify what you're feeling, give it space. People, they shut down and they avoid it because they don't want to give it space. They don't want to feel it. I know it sucks, but you can't go around it. Shame is not something you can go around. You have to go through and understand where it comes from. And
Why can't you go around shame?
because it's still there. And if it's still there, it's still wreaking havoc on all the things, on your relationships, starting with the relationship with yourself.
So it extends out from self into the relationships that okay.
Yep. And so my tagline is I assist people with improving intimacy with themselves first and then others because it starts with you. And so it starts with regulating emotions. I do emotion regulation with all of my couples. So because we need to understand what's underneath. I use iceberg method where, we take a look at the tip. That's how we exhibit emotions and, anger specifically, but it's what's underneath that we really aren't paying attention to. And then I teach them how to regulate their emotions. How do they know when shame is coming up? Does their heart start beating faster? Do they get fidgety? Do they, get a little spicy with their tone? Like how the body always gives you cues. Are you willing to slow down enough to recognize it and tap in to your body enough to recognize it? So being able to recognize it and say, oh, I'm getting a little dysregulated, right? I'm getting a little spicy. I know for me, when my ears, they feel hot, that's my body telling me, Nikquan, you better fall back because you're going to tear some stuff up. So I listen today, right? I listen.
You know what gets me? The part where you're like, you need to be able to slow down in order to be able to identify the emotion. And it has me wondering about for people that do have difficulty slowing down, like what contributes to that difficulty. And, sometimes maybe slowing down feels dangerous. Maybe it feels like you're letting your defenses come down as opposed to keeping them up, right? So if you're keeping the same momentum, and also just thinking about how some people are actually afraid of being curious. Because if you slow down and you're going to identify your emotions, there's a level of curiosity, like a bit of self-talk that has to happen with, okay, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? And so for those who do struggle with doing that, what do you say to them?
One, I always explore that because that's a lesson. At some point in time, that person, I'm willing to bet my last dollar, that person learned slowing down, using their voice, being curious in some form or fashion wasn't safe. Right? So I want to understand more about that. Where did you learn that? What did you learn about that? Right? In giving them methods and tools to help them regulate themselves. Like, one, you're gonna have to reauthor. So we're reauthoring our reauthoring means to like rewrite, right? And I know you know this, but to the people, right? As a narrative therapist, right? To rewrite your story, to give yourself permission to begin again, and to write a script for your life that resembles where you are now and where you're going, not just what trauma and shame has taught you, right? And so giving yourself permission to do something different and to do it afraid, because that's really oftentimes where it stems from, right? This feels unsafe for me. This feels, I'm afraid of it. It's uncomfortable. So giving yourself permission to be uncomfortable and do it anyway.
Is there a way to identify if the fear is real? Like the feeling is valid, right? But is there a way to like assess to see, is this fear? Because there are consequences to every choice and every action. So how would someone be able to figure out this fear? I know I'm feeling it, so it's valid, but is it factual? How do they
That's
differentiate between the two?
so that's a layered question, right? Because is it factual? Yeah, but are you going to have a negative consequence because of it? That's a different story.
Hmm.
And what does that negative consequence consist of? Is it something that's going to put you in harm's way? Then I definitely understand that. Now that's a deeper conversation, right? Because abuse of any kind is completely unacceptable. So if you have a consequence, if you are afraid of a consequence that is related to harm, emotional, physical, sexual, psychological, financial, whatever, then absolutely, I'm never going to tell anybody, oh, just slow down and lean into that consequence. But if the consequence is more conflict, it's a longer dialogue that I'm really trying to avoid because I really don't want to hear what this fool got to say, right? That's something that you can lean into.
Yeah.
Is it a consequence? Yes. Is something you may not like? Yes. But is your safety a problem? If your
Yes.
safety is
There's
a
different
problem,
degrees.
we got a different conversation, right? Because we should not be in relationships where our safety emotionally or otherwise is a problem.
Mhm.
That's different.
Got it. The icing each other out tends to be a concern that I hear with a lot of couples because it's just like, oh, now they're shutting down and they're not talking to me, acting like I'm not here. And even though that's not, um, there's degrees to that, right? Because it can be seen as emotional abuse as well. But for some people where that becomes a paralyzing experience, they will do everything to not have to experience that.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
So that goes back to the emotion regulation. Because if you step in, if you intercede on your own behalf when you start to get elevated, when your heartbeat starts to race, if your right leg starts to happen, so it's having that awareness with your body, right? So that's the first step that we go through, identifying your physical cues of emotion. If you intercede then and say, hey, things are getting a little elevated, you know what? Let's take a beat. Give me an hour. Give me 2 hours. Ideally, yeah, they say don't go to bed angry, but that's just not some people's reality, right? But if you're going days on end, that's the icing out, right? And so it's identifying those physical cues of emotion, asking, not just walking away, but asking for a break so that we can both go and take care of ourselves. And so that means we are eating a snack, drinking something cold, grabbing some ice if you feel emotionally flooded, taking a walk safely, journaling, listening to some music that's going to, uplift you, but doing something to take care of yourself so that you can come back and resolve the issue when cooler heads can prevail. Because when people have learned, like, this is not safe for me, no, I'm not going to do it. But when I hit them with that, oftentimes that silent treatment is emotional abuse. They're like, I
No,
didn't
we ain't gonna
know
do
that
that.
I was being abusive.
Right.
And there's
Right.
more motivation to not engage in that, right?
Lean into
Because that's an unintentional one, but intention versus impact, right?
right. Right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned like having essentially like a safe break plan. Like I have my couples do the same. And that fosters even more intimacy because we're proactively talking about something that could cause further disconnect. And I mean, think about how often there's people, like you said, like don't go to bed angry, and they're going to bed angry and they're feeling ashamed because of that, because they weren't able to resolve. But if they're able to recognize that everybody has their own way of processing, their own timeline, we can still connect and be on the same page, even though the situation is not resolved between us. So it's like, okay, instead of us feeling some type of way about the fact that we didn't get this situated today, this problem wasn't solved today, let's take a break. And we know what this break means. We're going to still move in love. We're still going to communicate with each other and recognize, okay, we just have to put this on the shelf for tonight. And then with clear heads, fuller stomachs, then we'll deal with this the next day or hopefully the day after. But there's still a conscientious thought around how do we preserve our relationship? How do we preserve our love? How do we, put aside, you know, these rules that don't really work for us aside and really connect through all of this instead of feeling bad that we're not a perfect couple or that we weren't able to, you know, get it done that day. And that requires a lot of compassion and support from your partner when the shame does come up.
Absolutely. And a big thing is respect, right? Regulating your emotions, taking that break at an appropriate time allows for respect to be prioritized. Now I can move in love. But if we done hit 10 and I done talked about your mama, you probably talked about mine, whatever the case may be, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I sleep with you. I don't want to
Yeah.
do any of those things. And I just want to dead this situation. And, we sweep it under the rug and then we come around whenever, right? But regulating your emotions, asking for that pause allows you to do all those things that you said, right? And it dismantles. It is an absolute way to dismantle shame because now I'm not saying I haven't said nothing that I gotta, take back, right? I'm not sitting with all of the what ifs because we're on the same page. And it's a tool. It's effective communication, one on one.
Yeah, I mean, that dismantling. I mean, instead of hiding behind the shame of the thoughts or how the conversation has escalated, we're dismantling it when it's still small, still recognizing. And that can only happen, like you said, through transparency and vulnerability. I have to be vulnerable in order to let you know that I am not my best self right now in this conversation. I am no longer able to be respectful the way that I want to be. I'm no longer able to honor our relationship the way I want to because when we have those physiological symptoms that start popping up, I'm not necessarily using my full executive functioning and thinking rationally because of all the emotions that are stirring things up. So if I'm able to be vulnerable and say, hey, Nikquan, I don't have it in me right now, or use a code word so that we know when we use a code word that means we're enacting the break. That's me saying I am not letting shame hold me down. I am not going to be the person who just tries to appear that I'm unfazed. I'm going to be open with you and say, you know what, I'm not my best stuff right now and I need to take a break. So I'm not
Absolutely.
hiding behind it. I'm not hiding behind it. And so we talked about earlier on around like how shame impacts like intimate connections, especially when it comes to like sexual intimacy and all of that. But I'm thinking just even like bigger because one thing that you said in your TED talk was, even though I'm titling this talking about pleasure, I'm not just saying it's pleasure in sexual intimacy, but just in life. How do I move in a way where I'm experiencing pleasure in life? Right? So if we're thinking about breaking through shame and moving through that, what does that look like outside of the relationship?
So, when you say outside of the relationship, do you mean on an individual level?
Outside the romantic relationship, right? So it can be individually, it can be through our families, our friends, in the
Yes.
work environment, just like on a bigger scale.
Absolutely. And so it is my mission to find pleasure in, and it's my belief that we can find pleasure in most things. I experience pleasure and intimacy when I am with my children. And, my children are 25 and 19, and, we do all the things. So outside of romantic love, when I'm with my friends and we hang out, right? There's pleasure there. When I'm taking care of my body, when I get my hair done, which is my creativity and my nails, it's not just, it's self-care, yes, but it's also self-love. And so you can experience pleasure in so many things. You just have to seek it. And so it's in the small things, like I said, right? Like savoring your food, eating your. Did you take a lunch break today?
I did. Actually, right before I had some marry me soup that my husband made and I ate it. And I was like, this tastes so good.
Yes. Yes. And so because we deal with a lot of like successful couples, they're busy. So many people, they don't take their lunch break. Right? They eat at their desk, they keep going. You're not going outside when the sun hits your face. So you can experience pleasure in so many things. Look for it.
Yeah, and it becomes the antidote of shame because
Absolutely.
because there's an ownership when it comes to seeking pleasure in just every other relationship that we have and on an individual basis. The thing with shame impacts every relationship that we have, even an individual one. So it's like if I am, being vulnerable, if I'm being transparent in all of my relationships, it's a trickle down effect. It
Shame
won't just
can't live there.
Right. Shame can't live there. So if it happens in one space and I'm encouraging it to happen in another space, it'll just keep going. The momentum of that. Because, I mean, when you're confronting that shame, it's just like, we have a good thing going on over here and here and here and here. We can't let that happen here. So, I mean, I'm thinking about this with someone who is able to do this on their own, right? But what do you think about people who are just like, this is a bigger struggle for me? Like, when should someone seek professional help for dealing with shame?
So I'm not someone who thinks that, we should go to therapy just when, the shit has hit the fan or, our relationships are falling apart. As someone who also has a therapist and is in therapy every Thursday at 11, okay? And I think that therapy is not the only avenue, let's be clear. I do think it's one. And so when should somebody seek professional or just treatment outside of therapy? There are tools, there are things that you can buy. Like I've created the how do you want it relationship and sex conversation cards. These are for individuals to identify their wants, needs, and desires and to love themselves intentionally, which means that shame can't be running your life if you're loving yourself intentionally, right? They're for couples to build a healthy foundation and design a sex life that's perfect for them. So you can use these both. Everybody's not going to come to therapy. So there are things that you can buy. You can, self-help. When trauma is your author, you can get books that you can read that can help you, give you the tools to start to do the work. And if there is a history of, trauma, then absolutely seek therapy with somebody who is qualified to help you to identify your triggers, to create a new relationship with them, and to live a life that's not controlled by them. You are managing. You are in not control, but you're managing them. People think that you shouldn't be triggered anymore if you've done your work. Trauma and shame is something that has happened. It's not necessarily going away, but we can be in management of it if we know what it looks like.
Right.
If we have healthy skills, if we have healthy relationships, it's going to be piqued and triggered by an unhealthy relationship. I don't care what work you've done, right? But if you are in alignment with your friends, in alignment with your partners, with the people that you have around you, then you are able to better manage the things that you've experienced.
That was such a solid answer. Like, I'm like, okay, that's a great way to self assess at what point should I seek therapy versus, okay, here's a card deck, here's a book. Maybe I can try talking to my partner. Like, there's degrees of help so that people have more ownership over their process and their healing versus, okay, well, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with therapy yet, but let me try some of these things. I think that's a great way for people to kind of figure out what path that they should take or they want to try taking, so to say.
Absolutely. There's also groups, right? There's various groups that people can kind of get their feet wet with processing and what that looks like. There's guided journals. There's a number of things. But if you know that you need and would benefit from some guided support, Definitely. There's so many directories to find a qualified licensed therapist that can be of support.
Absolutely. Naquan, I mean, shame is your game. Like, you are the expert for me when I think about dealing with shame, pleasure, moving past it. And I want other people to be able to find you and to be able to, look at your work. And if they're interested in working with you, especially if they live in Texas, or if it's relationship coaching, which is global, please let the people know how can they find you.
You can find me on all socials at Intimate Connections with an S, PLLC. And then you can get to go to NikquanLewis.com and you can then do coaching or get to my therapy practice from that website as well. There are also tons of resources as it relates to all of the articles I've contributed to. Those are resources. Those are available also.
Thank you so much. You guys heard that there are degrees of where you can access information from her. So even if you can't work with her, she regularly contributes to articles. She regularly posts content. Please do not let finances be a reason as to why you don't seek help from her, because she offers so much for the free and the low. Okay, so please go ahead and connect with her. I hope if you are someone who is navigating with shame and you are struggling, please know that we are here to help you. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section. Me or Nikquan, we can reach out to you we can reach out to you in the comments. If we see that you have a genuine question that we can answer. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this video. Please like and subscribe and follow, because you don't want to miss out on my next guest. As always, please love intentionally, and I'll see you next time.